rethinking our nation. And so I've been joined now by lawyer Andrew Apia Dankwa. He is a private legal practitioner and he's helping us have this conversation this morning. If you've ever wondered where where freedom ends and responsibility begins, or how your choices actually affect our country, please stay with us for this conversation. And lawyer is over the phone lines for this important conversation. Lawyer, good morning. Good morning, lawyer.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing too, sir?
I'm doing great.
Right, and Happy New Year to you.
Many happy returns and happy New Year and good morning to your lovely listeners.
All right, thank you very much. I don't know if there's something like Happy Constitution Day that we wish ourselves, but
yeah, happy Constitution Day.
Okay, all right, and same to you. All right, Lawyer, let's get into our conversation this morning. Now, oftentimes when people hear the word constitution, many of us think of courtroom and some legal language. In simple terms, what is the constitution really meant to do for the ordinary citizen?
Oh, okay, so essentially, the constitution is supposed to be a document that emanates from the people itself. As in, if I'm supposed to put on my philosophical hat, then the constitution can be said to represent a social contract. A social contract, one between the citizens themselves and also between the citizens and the government that the citizens themselves put up. And so the constitution, first of all, emanates from the people. The constitution sets out the power, sets out the powers of government. It sets out the rights of the citizens, and essentially the constitution guarantee rights that nature itself gives us. And so, like I said, if I'm supposed to put on my philosophical hat, then there's a belief from a section of jurists that essentially says that God Himself gives us our right to our life, our right to our liberties, and our right to pursue our own happiness. What the Constitution does is that the Constitution can be seen as it's just a contract that more or less guarantees these rights that God Himself gives us, and it sets up government, and the purpose of that government is first of all to guarantee us these rights, and then to enforce laws and systems and norms that the Constitution sets up. And the Constitution also reflects the values and the principles of the people. So, as in very simple terms, the Constitution of a state can be seen as that. Essentially, it emanates from the people itself.
All right. So why should the average market woman, average driver, or maybe a student care about it?
Yeah, but like I said, it emanates from the people itself. So the constitution essentially belongs to the people of Ghana, and it's not just something that should be seen as belonging to the legal professionals. So treating it as a technical document for lawyers will alienate citizens from power and weaken democracy. My personal view is that for this our considered democracy to work, it's essential that we deliberately create a culture that is participatory in nature. Now, what that means is that everybody in Ghana, every citizen, market woman, the person in the street, ought to understand the essence of the Constitution, right, that the Constitution guarantees, and the responsibilities that the Constitution gives all of us. Like I said, it represents our values and our principles, and it will be very dangerous if such a document whose purpose is to more or less guarantee us our rights that God gives us, the people who for whose sake this constitution was put up do not even understand what's called the right that the constitution is supposed to guarantee. So, for me, I think is one of the most essential duties of government, of our leaders, to ensure that they deliberately create the right political culture that would encourage people to participate in this democracy. Because beyond everything else, what people participating in this democracy and understanding of our constitution does is that it first of all makes us tolerate diverse views. It causes us to hold political leadership accountable. In my opinion, these two things are very essential if we are supposed to sustain the ends of democracy, which is to guarantee for us the rule of law. And so it is very, very critical for the life of this constitutional democracy that the citizens themselves are interested in what the Constitution is all about, the rights that the Constitution grants us, the responsibilities that the Constitution demands from us, understand. And once we are able to achieve that, and we call it achieve that if we find a way of getting the citizens to participate in this democracy. And that's why some of us have been calling for, beyond all else, a deliberate attempt to decentralize governance. Because, when you define what democracy is not just power of the people, but it's also power by the people and power for the people. And really that's one thing that a lot of African democracies have to do is to create a situation where the power or the government will be by the people and for the people. All we do is just to go and start voting largely. But when it comes to how political decisions are made and how involved the people are in the use of political decisions, my personal view is that it's very minimal and it does not help for the sustenance of this constitutional democracy. But it is because people don't even understand the Constitution. People don't read the Constitution. People are not part of the Constitution in a way. There's this view that the Constitution is a document meant for just people in the legal profession. And for us to get the people participating in democracy, then we have to find a way to break down the Constitution to ensure that everybody understands the Constitution and understands the rights that the Constitution guarantees for all of us.
Right, Doc. But is it? You point out the fact that we need to actually make it attractive for people to participate in the democracy that we enjoy, and part of that would be to make the Constitution available. Do you think that we've done that? If we have, or if we haven't, whose responsibility is it? Is the government's responsibility to actually make the Constitution available? Whose responsibility is it really? I don't know if you get the question.
Well, I understand the question. In fact, what I said wasn't about making it attractive for people to participate. I think that it is a fundamental duty of government to ensure that we deliberately create that political culture where people participate in this democracy. So it's all about making it. Well, maybe part of the strategy will be to make it attractive, but one of the fundamental duties of government is to protect and defend the Constitution. And if that is a fundamental duty of government, then if there's something that history has taught us, the easiest way of protecting the Constitution is to deliberately create a culture, a political culture, a way of life where the citizens participate in governance. Now, what that would then do is that it will make people to tolerate diverse views. So if there's one right that nature itself gives us is the right to think. And the natural consequence of an exercise of your right to think is in your right to then speak, to talk your opinion freely. You understand? Now, government must deliberately create that culture where people tolerate diverse views. And two, when government succeeds in creating that political culture, which is participatory, then we'll see that people will hold political leadership accountable. Right. There is true accountability because people are participating in the democracy. They know what is happening. They understand what is happening. They understand their rights. So the most basic form of it is through education, so that at the start of education, these rights should be taught to us to our children. You get a picture.
Yeah.
We shouldn't wait until when they are class 1 nursery or crèche, we are teaching them about our values, about our norms, about our constitution, about our rights, the guarantee of those rights, about our political powers. You teach them. So we imbue those values in them right from the word go. And then we'll have, what's it called? Our constitution created civic education, a national of civic education. They ought to work. Because one of the critical functions, first of all, of government and of all of us as Ghanaians is our right is our obligation or responsibility to defend and protect this constitution. And I'm saying the easiest way of doing that is in deliberately creating the right political culture that will, one, tolerate diverse views and two, hold political leadership accountable. That's the only way in which we can guarantee for ourselves the rule of law.
Right. Okay. Still on the fact that still on the fact about we making the constitution available to people. I want to know from where you sit. Do you think that the average Ghanaian has a grasp of exactly what is in the constitution? If not, what do you think must be done to make it to make that possible?
What, so from what I said, I don't think, as in, I can't say that we really understand the purport, the object, and the details of our constitution. I don't think so. And I don't think that the government, through our constitution, created what was civic education, the National Executive Committee of Civic Education, NCCE. They must be up and doing, as we must deliberately fund them to do their work.
Mm.
And beyond that, I think there's just when you talk about education or school and all this, school or education, in whichever way you want to have, whether formal, whether informal, it's just a means by which we transfer knowledge from one generation to another.
Mm.
It's just that that's education. So then, education, whether formal or informal, sometimes you can use propaganda. You remember when in Ghana we think propaganda is just negative. When I was growing up, there are so many movies where you see American and Vietnam go to war, and in most of these cases you see that one or two Americans fight against thousands of Vietnamese, and they almost always won. They use movie as a means of propagating a certain belief that the American was superior to anybody. Also, when I was growing up, when J.J. Rollins formulated a lot of radical policies, one in terms of the rent issue, and two in terms of what's it called, interstate succession law.
Mm.
A lot of those they used to do Obra on Sunday, Obra or something like that. And those, as in theater, was used as a means of educating the people as to the reforms that have been made in succession and also in rental issues, in our lease issues.
Right.
So we can use all manner of education, not just the formal one, but through movies to educate and teach people about the rights that the Constitution grants them and why it's necessary that they participate in democracy. You get the point. And also, government must also deliberately, then by law, also do proper decentralization. Decentralization also includes proper fiscal decentralization. Because once power is there's a devolution of power right to the base, it's easier for you to educate the people about the constitution, because then political decision making will be done right at the grassroots. And to do that, people would have to familiarize themselves with the constitution, the powers that they have, the rights that they have, the responsibilities that the constitution demands from them. But it must be deliberate. It must use all forms of education, whether in the classroom, whether through theater, whether through articles, whether through concerts, whatever means, just to get people to understand the purpose of the Constitution, the objective of the Constitution, and the details of the Constitution, to find a way of getting them to participate in this constitutional democracy. Because that's the only way we can sustain our constitutional democracy.
I see. So let's also touch on some other things this morning. So how do constitutional rights actually show up in everyday lives? Because the focus of our conversation is to make it, make our listeners or our audience get to understand exactly how this shows up in their lives and then what they can actually do about it. So let's continue from there. How do constitutional rights actually show up in our everyday lives, even when we are not consciously thinking about the law?
So under the 1992 Constitution, our constitutional rights are lived daily. So for instance, through the fact that we are able to talk freely. I'm a political commentator. I can go on TV or radio, and then I'm free to criticize the government. So it shows up through our freedom of speech. It shows up through our freedom of movement. You can go anywhere in Ghana. There's no restriction on you. It shows up through our freedom of association. You are free to join any association of your desire. It is seen through our freedom of religion. I mean, you can practice any religion you want in Ghana. And then it shows up also in our participation in governance. These rights show up when citizens criticize government policies. These rights show up when citizens worship freely. These rights show up when citizens choose where to live or work. They show up in terms of ability to form associations, access courts, or vote in elections.
Right.
So these rights that I'm talking about, they are not rights that are abstract ideas, but they are practical freedoms that shape how Ghanaians interact with the state and with one another. And that's why I was saying that if I want to put on my philosophical cap, essentially a constitution will represent a social contract, a contract between the citizens, one, and between the citizens collectively and the government.
I see you mentioned something, and I want you to throw some more lights on that. You said any people can go wherever they want, but aren't there some certain restrictions when you are entering certain spaces in this country?
Oh, so that's security. So most because at the end, you know that all these rights
have limits,
have limits, and one of the fundamental limits is in terms of what's it called, security. Also, you can go anywhere, but I have a right to my property. So I have a right to grant you access to my property or not. But beyond these very minimal limitations, essentially, we have freedom of movement. You can go anywhere you want in Ghana also. Apart from where, unless, let's say, you can't come to my house unless I invite you.
Yeah.
Because we also all have a right to own our properties and restrict who will enter into our property or not.
Okay, so it means that, I mean, even though you have your rights, there are still some limits there. And I think that is actually one of the major things that we want to put across today. So the fact that you have a right. Go ahead.
So you don't have a right to infringe on somebody's enjoyment of their right.
Absolutely.
So we have rights. You understand? And there's a limitation on anybody from limiting anybody else from enjoying their rights.
Right.
Yeah, so the fact that you can go anywhere you want doesn't mean that in how you enjoy that right, you should infringe on somebody's right. And one of the rights that quickly comes to my mind, one is somebody's right to enjoy their property. You understand? And we also do not have the right to undermine the security of the state. And that's why you will realize that there are certain areas in Ghana designated as security zones.
Yeah.
And in those places, there are restrictions in what you can do or not do there.
Yeah.
But broadly, we have our right to move. We have a right to go anywhere in Ghana.
All right. So which of the constitutional rights do people in Ghana enjoy the most today, but we often take for granted, in your opinion?
There is the freedom of expression, freedom of movement, freedom of association, freedom to vote. I'll be deceivable if I say we do not that these rights are we are being hindered from expressing those rights. I actually think that when it comes to freedom of expression in Ghana here, you see how we are able to criticize government. But last year, I recall in 2024, I called for the impeachment of the president. People were like, hey, untrue. But I was able to call for the impeachment of the president because of the sense which we respect our constitutional rights, even people in government. And so we have that abundantly, and I think we are coming to a stage where we seem to be taking it for granted. But you can't go anywhere and just express yourself like we do in Ghana, at the detriment of people of painting the government black. But we are able to express ourselves. Another is freedom of movement, freedom of association, and our right to vote. These are rights that sometimes we tend to take for granted. But I think that if we have a thought through these rights and how these rights can help us in fulfilling the purpose of our constitution, then at least we can make giant strides there.
Right. But why do you think these rights are most abused or misunderstood?
I don't think they are misunderstood, but so when it comes to freedom of expression, those of us, when you have the right, so like right now we have so many what's called media houses, and that's one of the most fundamental arenas in which we can we can exhibit this freedom of expression. We should use it to enhance the purpose of our constitution rather than destroying. Because like I'm saying, it shouldn't be taken for granted. But for other reasons, when we get the chance to go on some people, a few people tend to use this hallowed right to destroy rather than to build. Yeah, I said that we need to create a right for political culture that will hold political leadership accountable. We should do that in a patriotic manner and responsibly. You understand? We shouldn't use it as a means of advancing our parochial agenda. Because if there's anything, there's records of countries where these rights have been used to ferment war and destruction.
Yeah.
I think that we should be guided by a sense of patriotism and rather use these rights that have been abundantly given us to push for an enhancement of our constitutional democratic credentials, especially in pushing the agenda of creating a political culture that is more participatory than parochial.
But many people actually, and what you just said talked about the rights that we have and also the responsibilities that come with them. Many citizens actually speak confidently about their rights, and I have the rights to do this. I have the rights to do this, but they hesitate when responsibilities are mentioned. Why do you think that imbalance is so common?
So, like I said, it is one. I think we both agree that first of all, people don't even understand the terms of our constitution and the obligations that the constitution also places on them. I think it's one of the most fundamental failures of that lack of civic education that has failed in making people even understand the terms of our constitution. Because I mentioned that one of the most fundamental duties the constitution places on all of us as Ghanaians is to protect the constitution.
Yeah.
And the object of the constitution, the purpose of the constitution. It's the most fundamental what's called obligation that's placed on everybody, every Ghanaian. I think we ought to hammer that obligation so that when political leadership is being used in a manner that is adverse to the agenda the constitution says for us, then it becomes the responsibility of all Ghanaians to protect the purpose of our constitution. I think that a typical case in point is in how Galamsey has been handled. You get a picture. Because you have a situation where, for instance, in our constitution, the people of Ghana essentially say that any property, any mineral found in the soil in this natural state belongs to all of us as Ghanaians. But to better protect the utilization of those minerals, one in a manner that will not only enhance our economic gains, but will also protect our ecology. We're going to place or create a trust in the president. So the president is only the president who can give or allow people to utilize the minerals for a set time, but to the ultimate benefit of the growth of Ghana. And then we have on record a president who says that I allow Galamsey to ferment and destroy the property of Ghana. And we fail as a people in defending our constitution by not calling for the head of that president. So the ultimate accountability.
Right.
So we ought to deliberately educate our citizens as to the obligation that the constitution places on them. Beyond that obligation to defend and protect the constitution, there's also an obligation on us to respect the law. We ought to respect the law. But that's the only way in which we can create that society where our individual ambitions and rights or ambitions in life can best be fulfilled. There's an obligation on us to protect public property. You understand? Now, were you not sad when our parliamentarians, people who we tax, first of all, to serve as a check on the executive? Because, I said that the purpose of the constitution essentially is to guarantee for us right that nature itself gives us a right to life, and a right to our property, a right to personal happiness. Now, to achieve that, the people of Ghana thought that the best way of doing that is to create a democracy that is constitutional. Because what we mean is that to limit the powers of government so that nobody has too much power to infringe on these rights that data itself give us. And that's why we placed governmental powers, we divided them. We gave some to the executive, and we call that executive powers to enforce the law. We give powers to create laws and to take the executive into parliament and the power to adjudicate on the law into the judiciary. And then the people who are supposed to be the custodian of this constitutional democracy, in just a simple matter of approving people the president has appointed to aid the president in dispensing with his duty as executive, destroy the party of Ghana. You all recall during the election time when some parliamentarians destroyed the party of Ghana, and we didn't ask for the ultimate accountability. They should have been sacked. Because there's a responsibility, there's an obligation on all of us as Ghanaians to protect public property that belongs to all of us. There's also an obligation on all of us to promote national unity. And that's why a funny issue like tribalism, you understand, must be abhorred. There must be an abhorrence to the core when issues of tribalism come to the fore. But sadly, you have a case where people who we give our political powers to are the ones that even cement tribal sentiments in the country. When they are campaigning for votes, when you have a case when a presidential candidate premises his claim to leadership on where he's from. And the case in point here is the argument based on the Dankwa Dombo Buzia argument. That's His Excellency Mahmoud Bawumia advanced when he made a claim to be chosen as the presidential candidate of the NPP. That argument was in all essence very tribal.
Right. Anyway, so let's
please, let me end on this.
Okay, sure.
The Constitution in the chapter 6, what we call the directive framework of state policy, set an agenda for us. And one of the fundamental agendas there was to promote national unity. And that meant that we have to eschew tribalism of all forms. We have to eschew religious policies of all forms. And rather promote a country where we will all be seen more as Ghanaians than our individual ethnic groups.
Okay, please hold on for me. Let me just announce the phone lines in case somebody wants to join the conversation this morning. So if you just tune in, this is Business Breakfast on Z101.9 FM with me, Nietzsche B. Hammond. And this morning we're having a conversation in honor of the Constitution Day. And we're talking about our Constitution, our rights, our responsibilities, and our actions. Basically, looking at where the Constitution, where our rights end and our responsibilities actually take over. And my guest is a lawyer, and he's helping us make sense of all of that. His name is Lawyer Dankwa, and he's Apia Dankwa, sorry, and he's helping us have this. Yes. He's helping us have this conversation this morning. You can join a conversation on our social media platforms. We're streaming live on Facebook at ZFMGH and also on YouTube at Z Multimedia. Please drop a comment on any of our posts and we'll read them for you. You can also send us a WhatsApp on 0544321019, 0544321019, and we will read your messages for you as well. So, Lawyer, let's continue the conversation. And I want us to turn our attention to free speech specifically. Now, freedom of expression is one of the most cited constitutional rights. Where does the law draw a line or the line between free speech and harmful conduct?
So, I keep on referring to the object of the Constitution. Now, because the object of the Constitution is to protect our lives, our liberties, and our right to express our own opinion. The utilization of the rights the Constitution grants us must be done within this context. So you cannot use your right in a manner that will infringe on somebody's right to life. I don't say the right to life here must be expanded. The right to life does not mean just breathing. But the right to life includes right to quality life. You understand? Right to have a good reputation. Right to protect your character. So that if anybody in how they use their free speech, you understand, infringes on the object of the Constitution, and that object being the protection of your life. And I say the right to your life, your right to property, and it must be looked at in a very expansive manner.
Okay.
And that's why the law, in its wisdom, grants us civil rights to pursue cases against people in defamation when they act in a manner that damages or destroys our reputation by use of free speech. Also, when you use free speech to prejudice or to prejudice or to undermine the security of the state, then you'll be infringing the law. And that's why you see that when you go and give false information that's against fear and panic, you have been held. So our right to express ourselves must be seen. The utilization of that right must be used or be seen within the confines of the principles of the Constitution, the object of the Constitution. And once you use this right in a manner that undermines or takes anything away from our ability to fulfill the object of the Constitution, then both in private law or in public law, you can be held accountable. And the laws in Canada, and I'm giving examples. The fact that we have libel or defamation as what's called an avenue to protect your personal reputation, and also the public is the one who knows. So that there are certain speeches which are criminalized, and I'll give you the example is when you give a false speech or a false statement that can bring fear and panic.
Right.
It will be in breach of having abused your right to freely express yourself.
Right. We're still doing some education here. So in situations where speech actually leads to fear, panic, or maybe violence, how does the law assess responsibility?
Oh, so that again, so it's up to what government or the state, attorney general, to go and prove, because also you should recollect that our constitution says that you are presumed to be innocent. Yeah, so they do so. They must show, first of all, that the speech is false, and they must prove beyond all that indeed it caused fear and panic. And it's for the judges to but the point is that immediately you have a law that prohibits you making a speech which is false and which can potentially cause fear and panic. And they are putting a limitation, a lawful limitation on how you can express yourself. So it means that even though you have the freedom to express yourself, you do not have the right, the freedom to put out, to express yourself, or to say something which is false and which can potentially lead to fear and panic. You get a picture. Yeah. So that in itself is a limitation on how we express ourselves.
But some people say that I didn't know it was false information. Should ignorance excuse citizens from responsibility? Why or why not?
Should
ignorance, the fact that they didn't know, so because people say, oh, I didn't know it was false information, but I shared it already. So
I think one of the basic is, I think it's right, and I don't have to talk too much. It's right that ignorance of the law or ignorance of has never been an excuse. Because you have an obligation when you're saying something to ensure that what you're saying is the truth. There's an obligation on you. The law imposes that obligation on you on you. But before you say something, you must believe in the truth of that.
In this particular case, it's not the ignorance of the law, but the ignorance of the fact that the information I'm sharing is false.
No, that's what I said. There's an obligation on you. So can you say something that you do not believe in the truth of it? And don't you think that there's an obligation on you before you make a statement to check and make sure that what you're saying is the truth? So it cannot be a defense that I didn't know that what I was saying was false. But there's an obligation on you to ensure that whatever information you put out there is the truth.
Well, back to the...
It's part of the responsibilities the law imposes on us.
Okay. Right. But back to the issue about the speech actually leading to fear, panic, or violence. Does intention matter or only the consequences?
So you made a speech, a free speech, and you made that free speech, what's it called, unintentionally. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. I mean, your intention was clear, but I mean, your intention was actually right. Just that.
You see, if you make a speech which is false,
yeah.
If you make a speech which is false, free speech, nobody put a gun to your head. You made a free speech, and that free speech caused fear and panic.
Okay.
I think it's pretty straightforward.
All right. Anyway, so maybe there's somebody listening to us who wants to know how they can express some strong opinions, and still contribute to national peace, especially during maybe elections and all of that? How can citizens actually do that?
Yes, so there are so many ways. I think in our generation, it's even easier. You have social media, there's so many avenues you can write an article. Just ensure that what you're writing is the truth. You understand? What you're writing does not in any way undermine the purpose of our constitution. You understand? But indeed, freedom of thought and freedom of speech is something that is even encouraged. I'm here advocating for a democracy which is participatory.
Yeah.
You understand? You can't achieve a democracy that is participatory if people feel that they can't express themselves. But I'm saying that in how you express yourself, the focus should be to build and not to destroy. And so there's an obligation on you that even though in expressing yourself, it must not to defeat the purpose of our constitution.
Right. Right. While we're talking about this, a very important aspect of the constitution has got to do with accountability and also the social responsibility. And I know the Constitution actually speaks about being accountable, not just to the states, but also to one another. What does that accountability to fellow citizens look like in real life?
Yeah, so in fact, when you read the Constitution, one of the underlying principles that underpin the Constitution is the principle of probity and accountability. And so in as in both that obligation, in my opinion, lies on both holders of political power and as a citizens. You understand? I think we owe it to each other to be patriotic, to be honest, in how we discharge in our obligations as citizens. You know, when we talk about obligations as citizens, we said that we have an obligation to defend the constitution. We have a duty to promote national unity. Now, defending the constitution, that you are defending the purpose of the constitution. So that if any citizen's right is being infringed upon, then I think it is all of our duty to defend the rights of that citizen. I don't know if I'm making myself clear. And a failure to call ourselves out when we fail to defend our constitution. So, example, case in point, you recall that organized labor threatened a strike action against the president when calamity was perpetrated. And in my humble opinion, I think they reneged on their call at some point in time. It is our obligation as citizens to hold them accountable, to call them accountable. And that's why I'm calling for proper decentralization.
Right.
Yeah, you understand? So that even at the local level, because rural governance, in my opinion, is happening at the local level. We can hold each other accountable in terms of how we, to the extent to which we participate in this democracy. You understand?
Yeah.
We shouldn't be passive, and we can call ourselves out. We can call each other out. We can hold ourselves accountable. If there's an ill that is being done to our country, we can call ourselves out for something that I do and allowing the wrong to be done. But ultimately, because we give a chance of our powers to political leaders, then it is easier to hold those leaders accountable.
Right.
And hold accountable isn't just about beating them out. But even the extent to which we aid our law enforcement agencies in enforcing the law. So we can hold there's an obligation allowed to hold each other out. And I think it is in that light that that Parliament passed the Whistleblowers Act and all those laws, which more or less puts a certain obligation on us to call, for instance, crime out when it's being done. So when you see somebody perpetrating crime, you call that citizen accountable when you go and report to the authority.
Okay.
I don't know if you are.
Yeah, I get it. But what?
So we should hold each other accountable in how we respect and defend our constitution, and also in how we aid in the achieving of the purpose and also the agenda that Constitution sets out for us, especially as is seen in Article 6, Chapter 6 of our Constitution, the basic principle of state policy.
Right. So, what role do community leaders, religious bodies, and even the media play here?
Playing what?
Playing in all of this, in holding each other accountable, or protecting the constitutional values in the society.
So we should see this in the light of our collective duty and obligation to create the right of the culture. Because I'm saying that to sustain this constitutional democracy, then there's an obligation on us to create the right political culture.
Right.
Now that obligation must be led by government. But it's an obligation that falls on all of us: religious leaders, traditional authority, civil service organizations, on everything, on the media, on all of us. Because in creating culture, culture essentially is how a group of people behave or act. Government leads, but it's all of our obligation. So you want a political culture that tolerates diverse views. Our community leaders, in how we organize our communities, in how we lead, must show that, and in fact, we must even promote the tolerance for respecting diverse opinions. We are talking about the second leg of that right political culture demands that we hold political leadership accountable. So the religious leader, the community leader, the teachers, our classrooms, in how we act and behave, we must be seen to be holding each other accountable. Because once we are able to create that culture, then it's easy for us to then hold people we've given authority to accountable in how they dispense that culture. So it's something that must become a part and parcel of us. But it will only become a part of us if we deliberately make this a culture, how we live our life. At every level of society, in your home, you must hold your children accountable. Your children must be able to hold you accountable.
Yeah.
But then once we're able to get that culture right, then it's easy for us to translate that to the right topic.
All right. So let's look at who bears more responsibility, whether it's the state or the citizens. I want to know who actually bears the greater responsibility for protecting the Constitution. Is it the state or the citizens?
It is all of our responsibility. It's not just the political. That's why the Constitution is not that. It was one of the first early articles that it's all of our responsibility to defend the Constitution of Ghana, both the politicians, but most importantly, because this is common sense. We are saying the Constitution emanates from the people, not so. That sovereign power belongs to the people. If sovereign power belongs to the people, then the obligation is on the people to protect that sovereign power. You understand? Now, what does that mean? Now, I'm saying that to protect the Constitution is a call to protect the objectives of the Constitution. You understand?
Yeah.
So that in any decision we make, we must have that at the back of our mind. Now, in every cycle, see the way we design our Constitution and how political authority is exercised, we've made it into a cycle, a 4-year cycle. Now, that 4-year cycle always starts with a decision by the citizen. But the citizen also make a decision, and the first decision in choosing a political leaders. And so, when you read the chapter 6, the chapter 6 says that in every decision that we make, every policy decision we make, we must be guided by the agenda set out in chapter 6. The political agenda, economic agenda, the social agenda, the cultural agenda, the educational agenda. You get the picture.
Yeah.
And we must understand that when it comes to sustaining and protecting this Constitution, in fact, I dare say that, in my opinion, there's a greater obligation on the people, even more than the leaders. Because the first decision in the cycle is in choosing the leaders.
Yeah.
And that decision is not by the leaders themselves. That decision is by the people.
Okay.
You understand?
Yeah,
so that if we do not take that decision lightly, and I think that over the years we take that decision lightly, because if you analyze the 9 times we've made that decision, the work going to seem to suggest that unless and until you belong to either the NDP or NDC, then the opinion you're not fit to lead, and that is a danger. That is a grave danger. We must be open-minded. You understand? And when we are taking that decision, we must take that decision with the ultimate interest of the country at heart. You must not take that decision as if we are playing football, as if protocol has a agenda. You get a picture. So was that decision then chooses people who would then lead an agenda that already ought to protect the constitution. But the first decision is very important. So for me, it's an equal shared responsibility. But if you push me to the wall, I think it's a responsibility that is even bigger on the people than on the political leadership. And that's why the call for us to participate in a democratic agenda is non-negotiable.
But tell me, what happens when citizens actually outsource all their responsibility to the state? What happens?
What do you mean outsource?
So I mean, instead of actually taking responsibility, they hold back and then they hand over all the responsibility to the state.
So when you do that, then you are likely to have a aristocracy. You are likely to have a situation where the people who are not even fit to lead will lead. And in that case, the very purpose and objective of the constitution will be undermined.
I see. Right. I know you have to go very soon, but can a strong constitution actually survive some weak civic culture?
The biggest culture that every constitution in the world has is where we create a culture that's parochial. One of the reasons why people do what they do is not in the interest of the state, but in their individual interest. Now that culture weakens all the institutions of state. That culture leads to the creation of strong men as against strong institutions. That culture leads to a situation where we no longer have a democracy, where the power does not belong to the but where the power will then belong to a few. And then we go back to the state of nature, which necessitated that thinking that we ought to create the social contract, a contract between the citizens and a contract between the citizens themselves, the citizens and their country. And that's why, for me, the call to deliberately create a political culture, that's the participatory. The call to have a proper decentralized system of government. A call to have a radical education of the citizens in terms of, one, their obligation to the state, two, in terms of the rights that the Constitution guarantees for them, is a call that should not be negotiable. Once we're able to do that, once we're able to create that political culture that is participatory, once we're able to create that political culture that will tolerate diverse views, once we're able to create that political culture that will hold political leadership accountable, then we put ourselves in the best state of guarantee for us the rule of law. And once we have a system where the rule of law is guaranteed, then we have the best opportunity, the best chance of fulfilling the object of the Constitution. And for me, that should be the call on this constitutional day, 7th January 2020. Once we do that, then we place Ghana in the position where we can reclaim our place as the Black South Africa.
Right. Okay. Today is a Constitutional Day, and I want us to just touch on a few of these things before we go. I know it's one thing to know the Constitution, and it's actually another thing to live it. I think we lost him there. We lost lawyer Andrew Appiah Dankwa there. We'll try and reconnect him, and then we can continue the conversation. Please hold on. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back. We'll try and reconnect him, and then we can talk some more about whatever we have to do. Please hold. Please enjoy this one. We'll be right back.
Problem there, better call Jesus.